Hello and welcome to the Strong Suit Podcast, where we focus on the people part of your business. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I interview a world-class expert on talent and recruiting so that you can build a company filled with rock stars. And I've certainly got one today. Alexi Robichaux is the CEO and co-founder of BetterUp, a fast-growing company in San Francisco Bay that is building a company focused on personalized and professional coaching to improve the scalability of your business. Because let's be honest, if you don't have great managers and teams that perform for those managers, you're going nowhere fast. And so Alexi's going to spend the next 20 minutes with us talking about how to kind of operationalize that, starting with finding the meaning in your work and helping your employees do the same. So with that, Alexi, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. It's so good to have you on the show. Why don't we start with just 60 seconds about BetterUp so people can have the context of the company that you lead. I think it's about 150 employees. You've been at it about, 5-6 years? Just give a sense of what the business does.
Sure, absolutely. Our mission is to help professionals worldwide live their life with greater clarity, purpose, and passion. And the way we do this is today by scaling what's traditionally been thought of as executive coaching, which we know from top executives like Eric Schmidt, Bill Gates. They will advocate as one of the single most life-transforming experiences in their own personal and professional development. But in bringing that through a combination of human experts and software to employees at all levels. And so we really help bring the first-time manager that personalized care, the new hire, that personalized care.
Got it. And you're doing this with software, or do you actually have a pool of live coaches?
Both. So it's a combination of software and a pool of live coaches, expertly vetted, some of the best coaches in the world. And you engage via video chat with them, text messaging, as well as practice and role-playing exercises to work on these skills in a safe environment.
Got it. Very good. So why don't we start with something you brought up, which I've always been fascinated, which is the first-time manager. So this is someone who supposedly, I guess, has been successful in their role as an individual contributor. So it's your number one sales guy, and you promote him or her to sales manager, and they fall flat on their face because the competencies to be a manager have nothing to do with the competencies to be a great salesperson.
Right.
So walk us through why people do that, and more importantly, because we all have to be first managers sometime, right? How do you begin to lay the groundwork so that your business can scale, even when you have first-time managers, they're not falling on their face?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think what you outlined is kind of the lived experience of what's often called the Peter Principle, right? An organizational behavior, which is you have a very competent, top-performing individual contributor. Based on that performance, the person is promoted instead of being based on managerial potential or leadership potential. So the traditional way this should be solved is to not just evaluate someone's performance as an individual contributor, but to really think about their potential. And so I think, you'll see these traditional 2x2 matrices, the famous 9-box, where you have different levels of potentiality, different levels of performance, and you talent plan and rate your employees. And even small businesses can do this, right? We use a variant of this. What's increasingly becoming clear from the literature and research is actually that potentiality is a really hard concept for you as a manager to assess in someone beneath you, especially when you haven't seen them in that role. Right. And it looks like what's a better lens, and one that we advocate for, is psychological readiness for a transition, coupled with an actual profound desire to want to manage. So one of our science board members, Adam Grant, recently did a study to Facebook, and they published an HBR, which was an illuminating insight for all of us business owners. It looked like one of the biggest, if not the single biggest determinant of managerial success was simply, does this person want to be a manager? Do they want to be successful at managing? No,
right.
Not everyone does. And so in technical professions, I was at VMware for many years. They did a fantastic job having principal engineer tracks or principal PMs, which were, if you're an IC and you just want to max out that performance dimension, you can get paid like a vice president. You can have the stature of a vice president, but we're not going to burden you with poorly managing people, which is terrible for you and worse for them.
That's as opposed to the upper out mindset where you're promoting people to have increasing scopes of responsibility, more and more people, till eventually they Peter Principle out, they blow up, and they leave, and you lose your best people.
Yeah, and we know that people quit managers, not companies, right? And so one of the best ways, especially at a business of 50 to 250 employees, I mean, I am just obsessed with how do we optimize that middle layer of management. We know this is true even in Fortune 1000 companies where we partner with organizations predominantly, but they are where your culture lives. They are where your performance lives. Similar to the human body.
Your manager is the embodiment of the company to you, the individual.
That's right.
So how do you begin to assess someone's readiness for change or readiness to manage if you haven't seen them in that role before? Is this interviewing, asking questions? Is it a written test? Like, how do you get at it?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some, I would say some laboratory ways. Like there is an actual statistically valid and reliable assessment called ROAD Plus, which assesses and psychological readiness for change and management. So you can administer an assessment like that. But we always think of that as just one cut of the data, right? A human is so complex. An assessment will not get everything. Yep. But I think that can help. What we're a big proponent of, and we're learning and figuring this out, at least at the stage of a couple hundred employees, is to have people in interim roles and to have them try the role out. It's kind of simple, but sometimes just putting them in a contrived role that mimics those responsibilities and observing that for 30 to 60 days, sometimes 90 days in our case, and even communicating that like, hey, we think you have this. You've articulated you want to be, moved to that position. Let's try it. And building that flexibility.
It's a battlefield promotion. It's not, we're promoting you to head of marketing. It's, we're promoting you for 2 months to lead this project or something.
Yeah, exactly. So we're promoting you for 2 months, 3 months to try this. It can be either the full role on an interim basis or a project. We call those Zardoms at BetterUp, where, hey, you just own this. You drive this.
Yep.
And that we find is a really good way. If they can't influence people informally where they don't have authoritarian power, I get really concerned, right? You don't want managers who are relying on authority to be effective. And so we look for ways to set up these environments where they are set up for success. You're not trying to trick them, right? This isn't like, I got you. But they're set up for success, but you're also able to evaluate what are their levers to move. Is it influence? Is it storytelling? If it's coercion or it's just fear, like you don't want that person managing.
Can you make
a really good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say a really good read on this. I'm a geek for the literature and read is a wonderful book called The Leadership Pipeline. And it covers 6 passages. And the first passage is from managing self to managing others. And what Ram Charan will talk about there is really these clogs you get if people can't make these transitions. So we're talking about this clog where you can't go from managing self to managing others.
And that's the biggest jump. If you can do that, then you have a better chance of going from managing managers to managing managers of managers, and et cetera, et cetera. But that first jump is pretty difficult. Not everyone is successful.
It's the most. And I think it's because, what I found in my own experience and part of my inspiration to start BetterUp, and what I see as the common pitfall here is when you're that top performing individual contributor, you value your performance and you go to bed at night and you're emotionally validated based on what you did today. Well, as a manager, you don't do anything directly. And so it's that ability or inability to emotionally remap to, I feel genuinely, authentically, emotionally excited and energized when my team hits a goal, even if I didn't do anything but coach my team. And so mentorship and coaching are just critical at this transition because yes, there's a skill component, but most of it is a self-regulation, emotional remapping component in my experience.
And that's the piece that seems tough to teach. If someone isn't inherently intrinsically excited and motivated by leading others, inspiring them to do their best performance, et cetera, can you teach that?
I think that is it is a very hot topic. It sounds, in my understanding, it is like most things in life, it can be taught. But like most things in life, well, we may all learn to write. None of us will be Shakespeare. Yeah. Right. And so there are some people who have a natural advantage, who maybe have a propensity. They won whether it's genetic or nurture lottery in terms of being leaders. But I think it is important. There doesn't seem to be meaningful evidence to the contrary that leadership and management is not accessible when there's the right motivation and desire to put in the hard work.
Got it. Where we started the conversation was talking about meaning and how to ensure that your team gets meaning in their work and gets meaning out of their work.
Right.
So it seems like it's such an important role of the middle-level manager. So as a business scales, right, you're 10 employees, everyone reports to the CEO or the founder. There's such immense meaning in the work, right? It's like an unspoken language. But now we start to add middle managers, and it gets diluted. Yep. So I guess for starters, I know you've done some recent work around this. Maybe you could just share some of the data as to why meaning is so important in your employees' work.
Absolutely. And just to dive into that, and thank you for framing that so wonderfully. It is that middle layer, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Is, you know, when you have we were like this company, when it's the founder and 5 other people, it's everyone sees the whole big picture because it's a very small picture, right? But as you grow, you begin to add these layers, and these layers can be accelerants to progress and performance, or they can be, you know, resistance to that.
Yep.
And what we know is that middle layer, in many ways, especially I think through a lens of meaning, has the hardest job, because they have to cascade up and down. Up, they have to cascade operational realities to inform strategy. Down, they have to cascade context as to why decisions are being made. In my own experience going through an acquisition, I was a director at a Fortune 1000 company, and this was the hardest. I didn't have a clear strategy from above, but my employees didn't go to the VP to complain. They come to me, and it really stuck me in a hard bind of what do I do? So we got really fascinated about this issue at BetterUp, and we commissioned a study with our group called BetterUp Labs, where we've committed up to $20 million over the next 5 years to pioneer the science of flourishing and productivity at work. And working with top researchers like Adam Grant at Wharton, Martin Seligman at UPenn, Sonia Lyubomirsky at UCR. And we looked at over 2,000 working professionals trying to answer this question of what, if any, is the empirical connection between meaning in the workplace and workplace outcomes. And what we found was really exciting, Jeff. The first thing we found is if you look at the 20 top percentiles and the bottom 20 percentiles on our meaningful work scale, we see that for the top 20%, engagement was 51% higher.
And let's define that. That means these are people that report that they feel and experience significant meaning in their work every day.
Yeah, they find their work to be meaningful.
They understand the connection between what they do every day to the purpose of the company at large.
We don't even, with these types of assessments, you don't even want to bias that. So you just say, like, to what extent do you believe your work is meaningful?
Okay.
Right. And then they rate. And then we ask a battery of other things, and we can draw these correlations, right? So we find that they're more engaged. We find that their intent to leave, they're 41% less likely to leave. So this is huge at any size of a company, right? To reduce turnover. And we'll talk more about this later. And then we find performance is always tricky to measure because you can't ask, you know, are you performing better is very subjective. So we looked at promotion rates in the past 6 months as an empirical measure of performance.
That's more objective.
And we found that Exactly. We found they were 1/3, 33% more likely to have been promoted in the past 6 months than those who found work to be more meaningless.
So the headline is people that get meaning out of their work perform best, stay longest, and get promoted and advance the company.
Exactly. Now, here was the catcher, though. We found that only half of people on average only found work half as meaningful as they think it should be, right?
On average.
So they actually,
okay. Yep.
Yes. So we are under optimized. So one of the greatest things you can do as a founder, as a leader, is increase the sense of meaningfulness in your workplace.
So give an example of what that looks like. So let's say I lead a 100-person company. So I've got a layer of middle managers. I'm either leading a department, so I'm VP of sales, or I'm the founder or the CEO.
Sure.
How I can't say the beatings will begin if you guys don't feel meaning in your work. So, so what do I do?
Right. Yeah, this is the hard thing, right? Meaning is about positive motivation, almost, it seems, by definition. Doesn't mean there can't be, hardships, but we looked at what makes work meaningful. I think what you're getting at, right? And it looks like from our data, the biggest driver of meaningfulness at work is work that feels like it's tied to personal growth. And that's actually followed by 4 items down, professional growth. And so it seems like people can distinguish when I'm investing in you as an employee, versus whether I'm investing in you as a human being. And so our big takeaway is meaningfulness is a function in many senses of treating people as a human being first and employees second. And saying, hey.
So let me pause to make sure I'm clear on this. So what you're saying is meaning or meaningful work is less about, am I going to change the world through the work of this company? Are we making a dent in the world, Steve Jobs? Mm-hmm. And it's more about, am I growing individually, gaining new skills through the work that I'm doing? Is that
that's what our data showed. In fact, service, these ideas of serving humanity or inspiration were lower in the data set than I feel like so I think the psychological term to aggrandize this to the equal level of putting a dent in the universe would be self-actualization. When work feels self-actualizing, like I'm realizing my potential, people rate it as more meaningful, which if you view this through a lens of Viktor Frankl, is not at all surprising. If you take the Maslowian or Frankl's lens, this is like, of course, this is the outcome of the data.
Right. I guess it's a little surprising because I think there's a lot of perceptions that, especially with millennials, they want to find a company that's going to fix the world, improve the world, and that in and of itself is enough meaning, provides enough meaning or meaningfulness in the work. What I hear you saying is a lot of it is the individual's perception of what they're getting out of it.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a selfish thing, right? I think it's that big mission matters, right? We're hugely mission oriented. And I think it matters, and this is me, this is not in the research, this is me, theorizing on top of the research. I think it matters because the mission provides the platform on which we can learn and play and grow, right? And so if you think of a Steve Jobs, or you think, I don't know if you saw Stanley McChrystal's new book, right? How do leaders like Walt Disney, who are really tough and bad managers, inspire such performance and excellence,
right,
in spite of their somewhat not great managerial skills? And I think what you find is, yes, it's by demanding excellence. Yes, it's by having a big story, but it's also when you break the atomic unit down, it's because someone like a Steve Jobs, someone like a Disney, you leave every day knowing you did your best work and you grew. And it came at a huge cost, right? And it didn't have to be at that huge emotional cost.
Yeah.
But it's actually that atomic unit of the mission inspires me to grow more to achieve the mission than just the mission itself. And so I think the thought experiment is, there's a lot of great companies out there, we won't say names, who have great missions, but tons of disengagement in the workplace.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of companies that don't have the most inspired missions, where you have fantastic engagement and meaningfulness because that mission is channeled into self-growth.
So the middle manager's role, part of the middle manager's role, by middle manager, I mean anyone that's not the CEO and not an individual contributor at the bottom of the organization, is to negotiate what self-actualization looks like for the individual and map that to what the company needs and where we're heading and our mission, and find the overlap, almost like a Venn diagram. And that's where the win-win occurs, right? I have to understand my people. Each of them, to your point, Alexi, have different goals, their own definition of meaningfulness. I know what my CEO or my board or my investors expect and where we're heading, and I got to find the overlap. And if I can do that to inspire them, I drive that sense of connectedness. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, actually, one of the most counterintuitive findings we found was that the deepest levels of job satisfaction occurred when employees felt, just like you said, that their personal journey is being supported by the culture around them. And the manager is the primary catalyst of that. And so this is key, that my personal values are aligned with my peer and colleagues' values and aligned with management's values. And it seems that more important than what those values are, actually we know this, more empirically, more important than the content of those values is the fact that those values are aligned, right? And so we call that the X model, is that the company's trajectory has to intersect with your trajectory, right? And I think that's fair and that's intellectually honest. Like, you aren't going to grow in your career if what you want to do is completely orthogonal to what the company wants.
And one day everyone's going to outgrow the company, or the company is going to outgrow them, not just because of skills, but because maybe their reasons for being start to diverge. And that's okay.
Totally. Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think Reid Hoffman hits on this in The Alliance, right? How do you do tours of duty, where I think that's a beautiful idea for small businesses, is tours of duty. It's not a permanent position for 18 years, but it's like for 6 months, work on this project. You're jazzed about it. We need you in the company. And maybe in 6 months, there's a new project. And so I think as a small business owner, we have the privilege of not just adopting the giant pyramid from Fortune 100 companies, but really thinking more about how the SEALs think about it, the Navy SEALs, or how Spotify with guilds and chapters, and these more agile ways of organizing that are bottoms up. Now, they still have hierarchies in leadership, but it's really that mid-level leadership does the heavy lifting as opposed to a command and control from the CEO.
So many middle managers are so poor at this, and I would implore our listeners who lead them to decide if they have a genuine interest in improving at this. And if they don't, if they just want to be a manager for the sake of status, they're in the wrong place, right? They should not be leading people, because you're not going to focus your time on this, which means their people are not going to feel engaged and derive meaning from their work, and they're going to leave.
I think that's right. I think what we're learning increasingly in the science with BetterUp Labs and our research partnerships is it looks like the ultimate job of management, counterintuitively, may be just to help your people flourish. Yeah. And when you do that, you see the performance. When you do that, you're engaging in coaching and soul crafting in meaningful ways. And that is a huge moral obligation, in my opinion. And we don't talk about that a lot. And so if you want the promotion, if you want the pay, if you want the status, my job as CEO is to craft alternative paths for you that give you a meaningful sense of progress and personal growth that don't require you to pick up this moral burden to coach and develop others. That's unfair. And today we only have one path. And so I think you get a lot of mixed messages at that middle management layer as to why people are there. And then as founders of companies, we wonder why our frontline employees don't get it, or they don't have the full picture. And inevitably, I find when you double click and you go in, you do some skip levels, it's that manager in the middle either doesn't have the right skills and themselves needs coaching, or as you said, oftentimes they're just there for the wrong reasons.
And it's pretty easy to detect if you lead a business or if you lead a function and you meet with your middle manager and you say, tell me about your team. What are their individual aspirations? What are their career goals? What's important to them? The middle manager can't tell you. You kind of have your answer. That either they don't know how to do it, they've never been taught, to your point, or they really have no interest in it, in which case they need to pursue a different role.
I think that's right. I think that's spot on. I mean, I think the other thing I find is a great litmus test is offer them coaching. I'm very leery of people who want to manage and develop others who will not manage and develop themselves, right? This is actually how Drucker would have always articulated is you manage oneself first before you manage others. And so I think a good litmus test is give the people the benefit of the doubt, give your managers that, invest in them, and see who takes the investment opportunity.
Yeah, not everyone will, and some will. Yeah.
And that's telling. I wouldn't make an employment decision based on that, but it goes in my mental database. If you're not hustling to improve and always get better yourself, do I want you responsible for getting other people better? For me, it seems like at cross purposes.
Alexi, this is fascinating. How can people learn more about BetterUp or get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to learn about the company is to go to betterup.co.co. It's just betterup.co. You can find me at Alexi@betterup.co. Just shoot me an email, and we're here. We'd love to chat. We do have an offering for small, medium-sized businesses. So folks that are our size, we're excited to partner and support where we can.
Great. Well, congratulations on building what sounds like a very meaningful, to use a pun, company that's really trying to make an impact on this. I give you a lot of credit. So thanks for making the time.
Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.